For the first time in Standard, we got buffs. It's really interesting. I've been really excited. I liked the Molten Giant reversion when Molten Giant rotated into wild format. That's really nice. I would like to see maybe retiring Equality and bringing it back to 2 mana, but that's wishful thinking right now. Future plans, probably. But now, current buffs. I'm going to go through all of them based on class, starting with Druid, same order from left to right as the picture. So we have Gloop Sprayer, down to 7 mana. I think it's more viable. I'm not sure, it's still a win more card, but at 7 mana, at least a little bit of experimentation, maybe in an odd Druid deck. Odd Druid, focus on hero power, maybe it could work. Also in the Odd Druid slot, now we have 9 mana Mulch Muncher, which isn't much of a change. I don't know. It's a little bit hard. This is probably a buff to a wild more than anything, because living mana is still 5 mana, and in an odd deck with the hero power, you could get a little bit more work done. Mulch Muncher has always been on the cusp, though. At 10 mana, you got to reduce it twice, get a rush 8/8. That's pretty strong. That's like for 8 mana, you get a 7/7 with charge that can't attack face with charging Devilsaur, but Mulch Muncher is pretty decent. Probably with landscaping, living mana, it's enough to get it down to playable, but not sure if it's going to see play even in a wild, odd, tempo or zoo-based Druid. Interesting though. It does counter a lot of different things in the metagame. I've seen talk that the buff to Mulch Muncher is an indirect nerf to Grave Horror being summoned off of Conjurer's Calling. And I can go for that. You play your 0 mana answer, you take down one of the Conjurers, and then they hero power it down, and I don't know. It's not very efficient. Maybe. Up next, Hunter. We have Necromechanic, down to a 4 mana 3/6. That's real strong stats. I don't know about in current format if there's enough incentive. Spider Bomb's real strong with Necromechanic. Probably enough to carry a Necromechanic Death Rattle Hunter. Cybertech chip, I've been testing it out in Mech Hunter, and it's actually pretty decent for refilling your hand. I was always a big fan of Infest, so double add a Death Rattle, maybe. Flark's Boomzooka down to 7 mana. That's a pretty big discount, but I don't see it changing anything. There's just no way to get your minions back. I guess you have 9 lives. You could get back with 9 lives. If you throw an Oblivitron and get out a Sneed Shredder with Flark's Boomzooka, that's pretty good. Or even Sneed Shredder is pretty good. Maybe in a Death Rattle deck, but 7 mana is still pretty expensive. You'd have to get a big Control Hunter and maybe a little bit of waves in Wild. If you've got it, probably try it out in Wild with Shredders and other really good Death Rattle minions. Sylvanas is probably still pretty good with it. Mage got 3 mana Unexpected Results. I played Unexpected Results with the new spell damage package, trying to get new cards with the Librarian, and I didn't get good results at 4 mana. Maybe just the 1 mana discount makes it a pretty strong tempo card. Getting it back up to 4 mana, but summoning 2 5-drops, that could be good. I don't know, it's an interesting position. It is a random card. I don't think it can go any lower, but maybe it could have summoned 2 3-drop minions. Maybe? I don't know. It seems like it should be better than it is, and maybe in Wild where you have better spell damage. Or maybe you just go on curve, you play 1 mana card, 2 mana Reservoir, or if you're not going up against a ping class, Thalnos, into unexpected results on curve, 2-3 minions. That's probably pretty strong. Got 5 mana Luna's Pocket Galaxy. Is a big buff. Not sure if it's an impactful buff though. It's got the quest from Druid, but it's just not that strong. It's on turn 5. Maybe with Eluneth, with some repeated card draw, it's just so high rolly. If you can get it on 5, or if you can get it earlier with Sorcerer's Apprentice and the coin, it's probably going to win you the game, but outside of that, it's hard to see that. And you don't have that added level of security of ice blocks and maybe in a freeze mage, but you're still depending on drawing it is the big thing. I guess you could add it to the shell where you're discounting things like giants, because giants really benefit from it. It seems like high roll card to me. We got Paladin, Crystology, down to 1, 50% decrease. In mana cost, that's really strong. Crystology was already pretty good. I mean, you fetch really specific things. In Wild, I've been trying out Crystology to 1, and I really like it. You can get your Stonehill Defender in your Odd Paladin, and you can get your Argent Protectors. It's a good turn 1 play. It's a good turn 2 play with another 1-drop, especially when you fetch a 1-drop from your deck. You don't fall too far behind. It's really efficient card draw. I think it's pretty good, and you can fit it into a lot of curves. Glowstone Technician, it's still mediocre. I know there's functional hand buff decks, and you can add it. I don't see it as being worth crafting. Is it better than the 5 mana 4/4 that buffs your hand every turn? Probably. But is it good? I don't think so. Hand buff still is very slow strategy, and it's hard to draw cards, and at least now there's more healing. There's quite a lot of more healing because of the twin spell Lifesteal card. So maybe some hand buff in Wild. I don't know about using it in any other decks, because in an Odd Paladin, you want to empty your hand by turn 5. Sometimes you keep enough cards. Maybe it's a buff based on Crystology, because Crystology and then Glowstone Technician buff the cards you just drew. I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. Up next is Priest. We have Cloning Device, down to 1 mana. I'm just going to be honest. Cloning Device should have been 1 mana at the beginning. I don't have no clue why this one Discover spell was like that. You got Hallucination. You got Blazing Invocation. You got Pilfer. You have all of these spells that are priced at 1 mana, and then Cloning Device was 2 mana. I don't know. Is it going to see play? Maybe. It's got scouting potential. Scouting potential is good. I like Chameleos. Chameleos is really well designed and pretty fun too. But is Chameleos a good card? Not usually. I'd like to see a priest deck that could use it, but that's probably a really slow control priest that likes to out-resource the opponent. The opposite of that is the buff to extra arms. This plays really well with Radiant Elemental. I can see it snowballing pretty fast, giving a minion +2/+2, and it's not twin spell. It gives another spell that gives a minion +2/+2. It's pretty strong if you can put it on an early game minion. Of course, Priest doesn't usually get many early game minions. I mean, you got Northshire Cleric, and I think that's the only really good 1-drop Priest has right now. It's just weird. Maybe in the right zoo deck. I've seen some stirrings in Wild. It is strong, but is it strong enough? It should see play if Blessing of Kings sees play. Of course, this is a more flexible Blessing of Kings that you can bank and use on turn 2, so it should probably see more play than Blessing of Kings. Of course, Blessing of Kings isn't a very aggressive class that you always have a target for. So maybe it balances itself out. And then for Rogue, we got a 50% discount on Pogo Hopper. It's pretty good. I think there's not quite enough activators for Pogo Hopper, and you get into that weird position in Wild where is it better to run Pogo Hopper or is it better to just run Mill? Is it better to run healing cards or to shuffle your Pogo Hopper or to shuffle your other cards back into the deck? It's one of those trade-offs, and it's going to be interesting to look at it in the future, which one's better, if it's just better to try to mill your opponent out or to play for the board with Pogo Hoppers. I don't know. We have 2 mana Violet Haze. That's 2 mana, draw 2 cards, in quotation marks, but really adding 2 Death Rattle cards to your hand. That's not too bad. It's not good competitively, but it's probably really good for the health of the game. Because if you're a new player and you get this card, you're like, I spent 2 mana and 1 card to get 2 cards. You can start seeing the wheels turn for card advantage. And that's pretty good, especially in the common slot. And it gives players more of a chance to play with cards that they don't have access to. Getting a Myra Rotspring off of Violet Haze, that's really fun for a new player. I think that this is more so a buff, not for the competitive scene, but for the enjoyment of players. Pulling a Violet Haze out of a pack is pretty cool. I like that design. We got Shaman. 4 mana Thunderhead buffed to a 3/6. Thunderhead was already pretty good. I had a lot of experimentation. Just finding the right package for it is hard. You have lots of spells, and Spirit of the Frog might be an option, especially with Krogwa the Frog, where you could play your Thunderhead, you play a whole bunch of low-cost spells, get a whole bunch of sparks, and then capitalize. But then you have the downside of overloading a lot. It's one of those balance points, and you don't exactly have the 11 mana giant to fix the problem anymore. There's no real good overload payoff in Standard right now. I think that would be an improvement. Maybe with Tunnel Trog and Wild, this could really make a mess. Complementing the going wide strategy in Shaman, though, we have the Stormbringer to 6 mana. This is interesting. I liked playing Evolution. In fact, Evolution was my favorite card in Whispers of the Old Gods. Just being able to transform all your minions into legendary minions is really polarizing. On one hand, you have a lot of options. Of course, there's going to be some of those games where you get Acid Maul and your opponent just Arcane Blasts or Arcane Missiles and clears off your board, and that's going to be so sad. It's okay. I can definitely see there being a benefit to it. It's probably good enough at the top end of certain curves. This is a real buff to the Jellyfish, Arcane Dynamo, so that you can find this pretty consistently. I wouldn't say that it's a good idea to play the Jellyfish, but if you had a really aggressive Murloc deck with some card draw, like Ice Fishing, and you're playing the Jellyfish, and you get a second copy of the Stormbringer, and you can reload the board a couple times, like with Spirit of the Murloc, I think it could work out. It opens up the game in a fun direction, but I'm not sure all the pieces are there in Standard. Up next is Warlock. Spirit Bomb to 1. I don't know. 1 mana, deal 4 damage. That's really efficient, and I'm not going to argue that. It's a little bit different. Now you gotta think, is Soulfire better or is Spirit Bomb better? 1 mana, deal 4. It's locked to a minion, so that's a weakness, but it's not taking away an active resource. I think Soulfire is still better in a lot of cases, though. If you need to damage yourself for certain card effects, then maybe you go with Spirit Bomb. I'm not sure if it's going to make an impact. Being able to dispatch certain threats, though, really good. Hinge Clan Thug. That's the 4 health minion that you want to get rid of. Breaking a Nerubian egg, killing the Nerubian for 1 mana. That's pretty strong. I can definitely see the moments where you want to tempo out this card. But your life total is the big question. Maybe as a one of in a Reno deck where your life total can be restored pretty easily. I'd play around with it at 1. Okay, next up is Dr. Morrigan. Still not the best. I've seen direct comparisons of Dr. Morrigan to Shadow Visions, where it's a 6 mana 5/5 Death Rattle, summon a random minion from your deck, and Shadow Visions is a 6 mana spell. Pick a copy of a random minion in your deck and summon a 5/5 version of it. And it makes sense. It's not in a class that can abuse Death Rattles. Now, with Necromechanic, that'd be real strong. But that's just not the option. You don't have Feign Death. You don't have too many options. I mean, you have the normal egg stuff where you can get rid of your monster. I just don't know. Are there any good activators for Dr. Morrigan? We can look at it. Demonic Pact, maybe. Shuffle it back in. The big advantage is with Darkest Hour, where you generate a whole bunch of tokens and then you use Dr. Morrigan. And I was running the 8 mana Dr. Morrigan in that deck anyway to try it out. To varying success. It's a little bit hard. Get out your Kel'Thuzad, bring back your Dr. Morrigan. That's pretty strong, though. There's cases where I can see Dr. Morrigan being really good, especially with N'Zoth. Of course, what happens when you have nothing but Dr. Morrigan left in your deck? I'm not sure it goes infinite, like Jade Idol. We'll look at it. We'll think about it later. It's got some potential, but maybe only in Wild. Last up, Warrior. Warrior got some buffs. Did Warrior need some buffs? Probably not. I don't know. Security Rover, that 1 extra health really changes some breakpoints. Now you can't kill command because Warrior's a little bit weak to Hunter right now. That 5 damage. Sinister Strike no longer kills it in Wild. You can Fireball it and still have to deal with 1/3/2, but 1 extra health changes a lot of different breakpoints. 5 is a much more common number than 6. I don't know. I think it might be enough to make Security Rover playable in the main deck, but only in certain builds. Very, very often, you still want to see it coming. Beryllium Nullifier, just with 1 more attack. This isn't a big change. I mean, it is a change. Being discovered, it makes the card a little bit better, but I don't think it makes it includable. I guess if you magnetize onto something with taunt, say one of the Security Rovers mechs, it could be more threatening than it is. That liquid membrane effect is pretty valuable, but I'm not sure that it is enough to cause Beryllium Nullifier to see play. I think in specialist formats specifically, you might see 1 or 2 teched in, but then again, it's weird because you get so much mech discovery in Warrior already. I think if it weren't buffed by being the 4/8, it got buffed enough to be included by random chance. It's just one of those strange things. You got a secret little double buff of the 2 Warrior mechs because they get discovered so frequently from Dr. Boom Mad Genius and from the 1 mana add 3 mechs to your hand, which is really strong card advantage on turn 10. And the final advantage, the final mix-up, is Snip Snap. Snip Snap is huge, but only in very certain decks. I think on its own, Snip is actually really well designed. Sort of. I think the Reckless Experimenter combo was a bad idea. They shouldn't have included that with Snip. It's okay. They refunded you the dust if you wanted to disenchant it. I'm fine with the change, but it is lack of oversight in the development team. But Snip, on its own, it feels like a complete package, just being able to magnetize to itself twice for a 9-mana minion that fills your board with 1/1s after it. It feels like natural inclusion. It might be a staple in some decks. In token-style decks, it's really strong. In mech decks, it's really strong. In decks that just need to go a little bit deeper, it just feels good on turn 3, on turn 6, and on turn 9. Sometimes on turn 10, especially if you have a 1-mana minion, like if you have a Skaterbot and give it Rush, that's really strong. It's just a lot of potential, and it's also odd, so you can run it in certain odd decks. Maybe with the Mulch Muncher and Wild, and your aggro token druid, because the 1/1s are pretty valuable. You want to have a pretty sticky board. Obviously, it's really weak to silence, but that's a general trend. It's weak to bounce. Doesn't feel good when your magnetized mechs get bounced to hand, and I'm going to say that increase in Hunter and increase in Rogue has made that a little bit more annoying. At least the Death Rattle triggers when you have no room in hand still, though. Overall, I think it's a good idea to change the set. It's been good to have buffs and a little bit of change of flavor and pace. Snip feels really good. Just getting a free legendary card already feels great. Getting a golden legendary card feels even better. Getting a golden legendary card that fits into all the decks you already have, or your favorite archetype, or can inspire you to build an inexpensive deck with it as its centerpiece. That's a really good feeling. I think that's one of the strongest points of Hearthstone, is that they just give you good stuff in a way that makes you excited to play the game. If you didn't really enjoy the Boomsday event, now you get your second round of Boomsday. Really supportive, really exciting, really engaging. All around, I think that the buffs were a good idea, even if some of them still seem underpowered. I am going to talk about in the future nerfs to the classic set and the basic set, because if they started opening the floodgates with buffs, I have very many suggestions.